Even as we're discussing these digital services, important to keep in mind that the Aadhar serves as the backbone as far as Digital India. Mr. Deshpande, a quick question to you that as far as Aadhar is concerned, it has been the backbone. It continues to be the backbone as far as Digital India services. My question to you is that the journey of Aadhar has not been an easy one. It's been a tumultuous one. We've seen initiatives by the government, we've seen criticisms from civil society, and even as recently as just a few days back, there were criticisms that came forth with respect to the use of Aadhar for vetting of electoral rolls. So just your quick thoughts on this journey that Aadhar has had to undertake and what these criticisms have been and your response to those criticisms in terms of use cases for Aadhar. Mr. Deshpande.
So predominantly Aadhar has been used as a place for keeping digital identity of individuals. And as far as the Aadhar records are concerned, we provide yes, no, or eKYC type feedback to various applications that want to use it. Now, this is a very powerful mechanism where you now know who the individual is and you can track that individual. Basically, you can get that individual's identity for any application that you need. So a lot of how it gets used depends on the application, and there are several checks and balances that are there in the Aadhar system to ensure that individual's identity can be protected. So I think there are ways to make Aadhar very effective and useful for people to use while maintaining individuals' privacy.
But again, Mr. Deshpande, if I can get you back on that question, that while there are, government does say that there are inbuilt protections and safeguards in place, the question that has been put across as far as the use of Aadhar is concerned, that should we just limit it to extension of government benefits? Or would it also be fair to take it a step forward for vetting of electoral rolls and other such use cases? That's the distinction that some of the critics are sought to make. Your quick thoughts on that?
See, the Aadhar system on a technical basis allows you to do deduplication of records. That is the main advantage that Aadhar can provide. So I think it's for the government or anyone else who wants to use it specifically for deduplication. Aadhar tends to be very useful. Now, most of the data that is being collected in other sources does not necessarily have any, it just has a pointer from Aadhar that allows it for deduplication. Aadhar itself has no evidence or information about the electrical records or any other records that are being kept outside. So as a technical place where you can use this infrastructure for deduplication, Aadhar is very useful. And to that extent, if it can be used in other places where deduplication is very important, then the Aadhar system is well set for doing those kinds of things. But in itself, Aadhar is not deciding where it should get used. All we do is to provide information about whether this person exists as identified by the Aadhar system.
Mr. Singh, let me also get your thoughts on the same question here, that I'm drawing your attention to the 2017 verdict of the Supreme Court, where it held that, in fact, the use of Aadhar will be limited for public benefits, government schemes, but also at the same time, simultaneously, it declared privacy to be a fundamental right. So even as we are diving headfirst into Digital India vision, the questions that many ask is that, are we exposing citizens to some inherent risks, given as how we don't have a data protection framework in place? We were nearing one, but there were some apprehensions that the government felt on the startup front. And for that and for other reasons, it's been taken back to the drawing board. Your quick thoughts on the urgency that one needs to show in terms of having a data protection framework?
See, first and foremost, as far as Aadhar is concerned, the usage of Aadhar is clearly defined by the Aadhar Act and the Supreme Court judgment therein, which says that it can be used for government benefits, number one. And number two, voluntary use of Aadhar is permitted, wherein the consent of citizen is taken for whether he wants to give his Aadhar for any public service or not. So that debate is very clear. When it comes to with regard to the risks that are associated with Aadhar, I would say that in spite of lot of doubts being raised and speculation being raised by vested interests, so far in the last 11 to 12 years of Aadhar's existence, we began in 2009 and the first Aadhars were rolled out in 2010. In the last 12 years of Aadhar's existence, there has not been a single breach of Aadhar database, and there has not been a single instance wherein anybody has lost anything because of any flaw in the Aadhar architecture or Aadhar database or the systems. In the same time, There have been many other systems built by the best of the IT companies in the world. There has been breaches, there has been data loss, there has been data theft, there has been identity theft, all kinds of things happen with the best of the banks, with the best of the public platforms. So Aadhaar is fully secure. Aadhaar has offered lots of services, just direct benefit transfers. More than 25 billion rupees of direct benefit, 25 trillion rupees of benefits have been transferred through direct benefit transfers. In the pandemic, we were able to do this easily. I was in a panel with CIOs, global CIOs, and I was told that the United States, the so-called developed country, is struggling to track the pandemic checks that they issued to as pandemic relief. They gave $400 billion of pandemic relief through paper checks and plastic checks. Sure. And they're not able to track where it went. So Aadhaar is fully secure. It has resulted in a lot of benefits, fully voluntary. With regard to the need for a data protection bill, yes, we do need a data protection bill. But having a data protection bill is not the solution of all the public service delivery issues which are there.
Sure.
It ensures that everybody who is dealing with your data is made accountable, and you have a right to know who is using your data for what purpose.
Being a part of that Digital India mission, you've given yourself a target of hitting 100 cities, growing organically. How far ahead have we come in that roadmap? And how much more time will it take for us to hit that target of 100 cities in terms of ONDC? And what are the challenges that you're facing in doing so?
Let me put a context right for you. See, the way ONDC is set up, it's a network.
Sure.
Network means there has to be multiple entities coming together to transact among themselves. There's no central platform. In a normal conventional launch of a bank or a stock exchange or anything, there could be a central platform which is 80% is in your control.
Sure.
Whereas when you're creating network, you're giving them a language and a grammar and tell everybody to talk. So then it would mean that the one way to test it is to get organically grow more and more people talk. And the scope of ONDC is very, very broad. You know, it could cover commerce, it could cover services, it could cover, even in commerce, there could be on grocery on one side and fashion on the other side. All those things has to happen. So it has to build up. So to make sure that it happens organically, we took up the most challenging part of it. The last mile, which is very challenging, is grocery and food. And we said, let's do it in a very small and steady fashion. Let's first look at 5 cities across the different parts of the country and bring some sellers, some buying platforms, logistics together to transact in a controlled environment. And since it is to have participation for very many people, we said, now after having started in 5, let us try to keep on adding those numbers. Because when it comes to grocery, it has to be hyper-local. You know, you can't buy atta from Delhi to Bangalore. Atta in Delhi has to be delivered by a merchant in Delhi. So similarly, we said, let us try to. That is why we put ourselves a target of going broader to have catalyst in every town. Then in some other places we're already again, we are going deeper.
Sure.
So it is not about this some number, because eventually, you know, in grocery, you need to be hyper-local. Let's say in fashion, you know, I can be in Delhi and still supply in Bombay. So it will be, so that way the city presence become relevant. What we are showing that we will demonstrate across some buyers and sellers, and we are getting fantastic participation from big and small in becoming actively integrating their system.
Right, Mr. Koshi, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for as a part of this panel. It's been a very interesting discussion talking about these open digital public platforms. And what's interesting is that the messaging from the Ministry of Electronics and IT is quite clear. In fact, taking this a step forward, growing from strength to strength, what they're suggesting is that we will develop a framework, the government will develop a framework to take some of these digital solutions that are made in India and to take them global. The idea being that Industry 4.0, India is hoping to lead that charge, and some of these open digital platforms, one expects, will play a big factor in that role that India is trying to take forward. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of our panelists who've taken out their precious time and shared their insights and perspectives with us. It's been a very informative session for us. There's much to learn, and this is an exciting space. There's a lot of action. We hope that we continue to reach out to you and you continue to indulge us with such interactions that will help us benefit from your insight and your perspective. Thank you once again for joining us. A very good evening to all of our panelists once again. Thank you so much.
In the next episode, industry captains and policymakers come together to deep dive into how the adoption of disruptive technologies and innovative business models will enjoy an upward growth trajectory. In a panel discussion titled 5G to Foster India's Decade.